my presentation about changing India, political independence to economic independence. That is, India got independence in 1947. Until 1991, we have one set of policies, and after 91, we made a major turn around as far as the basic economic policy, as far as the basic business system is concerned in our country. I start all my presentations with one or other kind of the prayer. So this prayer is, O Lord, Eternal Master, guide my steps, open my eyes, illumine my heart, and lead me on the path that goes straight to Thee. Then prayer continued, O God, grant me the serenity to accept the things which I cannot change, the courage to change the things which I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The first phase of Indian economy, that was a closed economy, 1947 till 1991. The very objective of the Indian policymakers at the outset of the independence was the creation of self-reliant economy, all within the democratic political framework. We adopted a socialist strategy, state-directed heavy industry. Everything was under the control of the government. No private industry was allowed. Only something whatsoever we were doing, that was on agriculture mainly. Main feature of that closed period, we have a license Raj, license governance. Whatsoever is to be done, the people, the industrialists, the corporate houses, they have to get the licenses. And the policy of getting the licenses, that was quite tough. Not possible at all to get the license for starting any corporate business house for a pretty long era. Then second was high taxes. The rate of taxes, they were quite high at the time. As I used to learn it in USA nowadays, I was interacting with some of the corporate people. They were saying now the tax structure is going quite high in our system. Then third feature, main feature, we have a controlled foreign investment. No foreign investment was allowed. Just the minimum part of foreign investment that was allowed in some sectors, but that was controlled. The economy was totally dominated by the public sector. Private sector was not in existence. All government schools, even if the bread is to be made, it was considered the responsibility of the government to manufacture or to prepare that kind of bread. Then we had lot of bureaucratic hassles. In everything, every license, every policy, the bureaucratic hassles, they come a long way to get the things done. Then we were having the MRTP Act. This MRTP Act was Monopolistic and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. The banking was ineffective, totally ineffective, because the public sector banking and some of the private banking was going on. Then employee burden, people, they were just made to join the government offices, government organizations. And once any person joined the government organization, people thought it's a wonderful to be in the government job, because once you get a government job, you need not work at all. That was the system. Then discouragement to entrepreneurs. All the entrepreneurs who wanted to start any kind of business, they were totally discouraged. No, not at all. No way to human resource development. Then we had so-called socialism. Socialism was there so that everybody in the country should have the equal rights. But it was the socialism as we can get through the George Orwell's famous novel Animal Farm. All men are equal, but some men are more equal than others. So that we were having at that time. Adamant politicians, they didn't allow, because they were ultimately ruling the things. Political psychophancy was there to a great extent. No importance to competition and development. virtual stagnation in the economy was there, and no market orientation, delays, corruption and red tapeism. So these were the features, and virtually, my dear friends, it was our compulsion to get that kind of system, because India was a slave for hundreds of years to the hundreds of varieties of the invaders. And that was the reason that we got such kind of system in the legacy. Then came 1991 reforms. This great Sikh, Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was an economist, he was a professor in economics, not a politician. He was a statesman. So he was asked to join as Finance Minister of India in 1991. He was the man who changed the destiny of India. In 91, we had a government of P.V. Narasimha Rao as Prime Minister, and this man was the Finance Minister of our country. So after that, we started picking up. This was the annual rates of growth of national income %. And nowadays, dear friends, we are having 9% plus growth rate in Indian economy next to China. And then the structural change in the Indian economy. We have predominantly the primary sector, agriculture sector was dominating. But when the system progressed, and after the reforms of 1991, nowadays we have 60% share of the service sector in our national income, in our gross domestic product. So this trend continued, growth rate by sector. So tertiary sector, the service sector now dominating, the banking, the insurance, the education. So that is dominating our country like anything now. Now Indian education, it has been open to the globe at large. We are seeing the campus by all the great universities of the world. And my dear friends, even the universities of United States, of United Kingdom, of Australia, of Malaysia and so many other countries, they are just opening up their campuses in India itself. Moreover, our business schools, now they are considered at par with the global business schools of any kind. Then poverty, it is reducing like anything now. Then by sector wise, so every sector, agriculture, we have negative growth because we started declining the reliance on agriculture, because ultimately now we have realized, and now we have got again our position. We have come to know that if India is to get anything, it is only and only in the knowledge. Remember, the Silicon Valley even in USA is dominated by the Bengalis, by the Gujaratis and by the Punjabis of India. You are having this Dell computer, and if you get any problem in the Dell, you just talk to the customer care and you'll get that customer service center operating from India itself. You have any problem in your mobile phone, you just talk to the customer care and you'll get that customer care center operating from India itself. Now India has become the hub of computers, it has become the hub of knowledge. Now we can proudly say that if you talk of knowledge processing outsourcing, if you have to talk about the business process outsourcing, that is in India itself now. The Bangalore, the Hyderabad, the two major cities of India, they are known as the Silicon Valleys of India, because all kinds of softwares, may that be of any country now, they are being prepared, they are being channelized, they are being operated from India itself. Then major implications. So we have recovered smartly from the crisis, newfound global orientation trade is there, and gradually increase in share in global mercantile trade and exports. Now we are having a large share as far as these exports are concerned, as far as the foreign reserves are concerned. Evolution in revolution. Now we have got the right track, and it is estimated that by 2020 India will lead the world economy. India will be the #1 economy, and the people who don't have some kind of interest at one point of time, now they seem to be quite interested. Yesterday we had been in the Collins Canwood Hardwood Company, and they were saying, now we are trying that our clientele should be in India because we feel that if we wish to operate on a higher scale, the big market that is there in available in India. Friends, there are two reasons of it. Number one, India is the maximum youngest population. After 10 years, we will dominate the whole globe because at that time we will be having the 70% of our population in the age group of 20 to 50. So that is going to be a major boost for the Indian economy. We are ready for takeoff. Free market democracy, agriculture grew by 9.1%, manufacturing sector grew by 7.3%, electricity, gas and water supply grew over 5%, construction rose by 6.2%, trade, hotels, transport, tourism. So all the service sector industries, they grew. One of the world's largest food producers, India produces 600 million tons of food grains every year. Its granaries had a buffer stock of nearly 50 million tons of food in 2003-04 and it has increased now. It is the second largest exporter of rice and fifth largest exporter of wheat in the world. Service sector, it's 7%. Export revenues from the sector are expected to grow from 8 billion and now they are 46 billion. Global investment in banks, brokerage and accounting have increased. Then foreign investment has moved into the front ranks of rapidly growing Asia Pacific region. For now we have cleared number of proposals as far as foreign investment is concerned. So FDI is open. Every fourth person is having mobile in India and every second person is holding the mobile phone in state of Punjab, where the total population you can think of, it is what we can say 120 crores of people that is there in India. Now there are 5 reasons why there is fundamental strength in Indian economy. Number one, it is now almost 13 years into a slow but steady reform process, increasingly opening up the economy. Number two, it has an innate entrepreneurial capability and culture. Number three, it has great human capital in terms of volume and educational quality. Friends, when we compete ourselves with China, we are much ahead than China. The reason being, India is having the largest English-speaking workforce. In China, they are in trouble just because of their inefficiency and lacking in English. In India, all of our people, they speak at least 3 languages. Number one, the international language English. Number two, the state language Punjabi, for example, me. The third one is our national language Hindi. And the people do speak Urdu. People do speak certain other languages. So minimum 3 languages. We all are having efficiency on the 3 language. Our medium of instruction from first grade itself, that is English, till graduation, till post-graduation. Then at the same time, up to kind of educational facilities available. We do have friends in States. We do have friends in Australia. Mind it. Those friends, they prefer sending their kids till their school education to India because they have realized that if you are to get the command over the basics of any subject, then you must send your kids to the Indian schools. Then it is the world's largest democracy, which is above all secular. India is known for its unity in diversity. Number of religions, they are there at the same time. In my state of Punjab, we have Christians, we have Muslims, we have Sikhs, we have Hindus, we have Jains, we have Parsis. All are professing their own religion, remaining in the same basket. Everything is there. No body is ultimately differentiated just on the basis of caste or creed. That's why about India, it is said that in India there is unity in diversity. Then education and economic growth. Definitely about Amartya Sen. a Nobel laureate in economics. Amartya Sen, he belongs to India. So Amartya Sen, when he got the Nobel Prize, he just got the Nobel hypothesis that one should invest in education if you want to reduce your poverty, if you want to ultimately better yourself in every sphere of the life. Then we have certain effects. Then this corporate governance, all of the corporate houses in the globe, they are talking of corporate governance nowadays. I happen to be there in UK, and the founding father of corporate governance, Sir Adrian Cadbury, I used to stay with him for 3-4 days in the United Kingdom. Friends, the corporate governance which the whole globe is talking of today, it is very much there in India since the ages ago. We have the religious scriptures, we have Bhagavad Gita, we have Vedas, we have Guru Granth Sahib. All those scriptures, they teach us a lot about the values, they teach us a lot about the business ethics which are there and which should be followed by the business houses. In our business, whensoever we start any new venture, whensoever we start any new day, we always start it by praying to that Almighty that, oh my God, I am starting it, kindly give me the power enough, kindly give me the strength enough so that I can do my business with trust, I can do it with dignity, I can do it with honesty. So those business ethics, those values, they're already there in our system. Then corporate governance, these are the fundamentals which any business house should include: transparency, accountability, value system, ethical excellence, principles before profit, man before money, environment, community involvement, human resources. The basic funda of our religion is threefold. Kirt karo, naam japo, vand chako. Do the labor. The first is do the labor, do the work. The second is worship the Almighty. And the third one is distribute whatsoever you receive among your fraternity, among your community members, among your countrymen. So this is the basic funda of our system of business, of our system of life. Then human resources. And I ended the presentation with your Statue of Liberty. We shall definitely win. And this is the most important slide. Thank you very much.